Ethan had never been the type of man who chased after excitement. His life revolved around work, home, and his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Every morning he packed her lunch, dropped her off at school, and headed straight to his small design studio where he worked long hours creating logos and posters for local businesses. His life wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful in its own way. Yet deep down there was a quiet emptiness that no amount of work could fill. It had been 3 years since his wife left. She'd grown tired of the slow, ordinary rhythm of their life and wanted more. Ethan didn't blame her anymore. He had accepted that some people weren't meant to stay. But even after all this time, he had never gone on another date. He told himself he was too busy, but the truth was simpler. He was scared. Scared of being hurt again. Scared of letting someone into his and Lily's little world. One Friday afternoon, his best friend Ryan showed up at the studio with a grin that could only mean trouble. "You're going out tomorrow night," Ryan declared, dropping a folded piece of paper on Ethan's desk. Ethan frowned. "Out where?" "On a date," Ryan said proudly. "A blind date, actually." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "No way, not happening." "Come on, man," Ryan insisted. "You work all day, go home and watch cartoons with your kid. You need to talk to someone who isn't 7 years old." "I don't have time for that," Ethan muttered, pretending to focus on his computer. Ryan didn't give up easily. "She's smart, kind, and actually wants to meet someone genuine. I told her you're not like other guys, no ego, no games. Just a good man." Ethan sighed. "You told her I'm boring, didn't you?" Ryan chuckled. "I said you're stable. That's a good thing." After 10 minutes of resistance, Ethan finally gave in. "Fine, but if this goes horribly wrong, I'm blaming you." The next evening, he stood in front of his mirror, fixing the same shirt he wore to every important meeting. He hadn't dated in years, and the thought of sitting across from a stranger made him nervous. He tried to convince himself that it was just dinner, nothing more. Lily, sitting on the bed, smiled at him. "Daddy, you look handsome," she said. Ethan smiled. "You think so?" She nodded seriously. "Don't forget to smile. Mommy said girls like that," he laughed softly. "I'll remember that." The restaurant Ryan picked was a small, cozy place with warm lights and quiet music. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early, his palms sweating. He chose a table near the window and kept checking his watch. He felt foolish, like a teenager waiting for his first date. Then the door opened and a woman walked in. She was tall, graceful, and dressed simply yet elegantly. Her hair was tied back and her expression was calm but unsure. Their eyes met, and she gave a polite smile before walking over. "Ethan?" she asked. He stood up quickly. "Yes, that's me. And you must be Claire." She nodded, sitting down. "I hope I'm not late." "Not at all. I just got here," he replied, trying to sound casual. For a few minutes, silence filled the table. They looked at the menu, made small talk about the food, and avoided deeper topics. Ethan noticed how composed she was. Her movements careful, her words thoughtful. But there was something in her eyes, something distant, like she was carrying a weight no one could see. "So," Ethan finally said, "Ryan tells me you work in tech?" Claire smiled slightly. "That's one way to put it. I run a company, actually. It's demanding." Ethan blinked in surprise. "A company? That's impressive." "It's stressful," she admitted, stirring her drink. "Most people think it's glamorous, but it's mostly meetings, deadlines, and people who expect you to be perfect all the time." Ethan nodded. "Sounds exhausting." "It is," she said quietly. "But I love what I do. I just wish it didn't come with so much pressure." He smiled faintly. "Pressure never stops, no matter what job you have. I design logos all day and people still expect me to read their minds." That made her laugh, the first genuine sound of joy that broke the air between them. "You're honest," she said. "I like that." Ethan relaxed a little. Honesty is easier than pretending. The conversation began to flow naturally. They talked about small things, music, travel, their favorite foods. Then somehow the topic drifted to family. Claire hesitated before asking, "Do you have kids?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah, my daughter Lily, she's my world." Claire's face softened. "That's sweet. Raising a child alone must be hard." "It's not easy," he admitted. "But she gives me purpose. Every day I look at her and think, I can't mess this up." There was a short pause. Claire looked down at her hands. "You must be a good father." "I try to be," he said. "What about you?" "Family?" She hesitated. "Not really. My parents live abroad. I've been on my own for a long time." She looked out the window for a moment before continuing. It's strange, isn't it? You can be surrounded by people all day but still feel alone. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I know that feeling. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was shared. Two people sitting together, both carrying quiet loneliness. For the first time that evening, Ethan felt like he wasn't just talking to a stranger. He was talking to someone who understood. As dinner went on, they began to laugh more. Claire told him stories about her early career, working late nights, making mistakes, and learning from them. Ethan shared stories about Lily's curious questions and her wild imagination. Claire smiled every time he mentioned his daughter. She sounds amazing, she said softly. She is, Ethan replied proudly. She's got more confidence than I ever will. When the waiter brought the check, Ethan reached for it, but Claire stopped him gently. Let me get this, she said. He shook his head. No. I asked you out. Well, technically Ryan did, but still. She smiled. Then we'll split it. Fair deal? Ethan laughed. You drive a hard bargain. As they stepped outside, the night air was cool and calm. The street was quiet, the city lights glowing softly in the distance. They walked slowly toward the parking lot, neither wanting to end the evening too soon. I had a good time, Claire said. Me too, Ethan replied honestly. I didn't think I'd enjoy this, to be honest. I was nervous. Same here, she admitted. I haven't been on a date in years, Ethan chuckled. So we both survived. She smiled, looking at him thoughtfully. You know, it's strange. I didn't expect tonight to feel easy. Maybe because we didn't try too hard, he said. There was a small pause, then Claire said, You're different from most people I meet. In a good way, I hope. In a real way, she replied. He smiled at that. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, unsure of what came next. Then Claire said softly, I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow. Ethan nodded. Of course. Thank you for tonight. She turned to leave, then looked back once more. Ethan? Yeah? She hesitated, then smiled. Maybe we'll run into each other again. Maybe, he said, watching as she walked away. As he drove home that night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. She was strong, intelligent, but also human. Someone who had built walls around herself for protection, just like he had. There was something about her that made him curious, something real behind the confidence she showed. When he got home, Lily was asleep, her tiny hand clutching her stuffed bunny. Ethan sat beside her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Guess what, kiddo, he whispered. Daddy went on a date tonight. He smiled to himself, realizing how strange it sounded. For years, he had avoided anything that might stir up old emotions. But tonight felt different. Claire wasn't just another face, she had a quiet strength, a warmth he didn't expect. And though he didn't know if he'd see her again, something inside him told him their paths hadn't crossed by accident. In her apartment across town, Claire sat by her window with a cup of tea, staring at the city lights. She thought about Ethan, the way he talked about his daughter, the calmness in his voice, the honesty in his eyes. It was rare for her to feel comfortable with someone so quickly. Her life had been built around rules and routines, around keeping people at a distance. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, she had let someone in, even if just a little. As she leaned back, a small smile touched her lips. Maybe this blind date wasn't just a random evening. Maybe it was life's quiet way of showing her that not all connections come from perfect timing or grand gestures. Sometimes they start in the simplest moments, over dinner, laughter, and honest words between two lonely hearts. Neither of them knew what the next days would bring. But both carried a feeling they hadn't felt in years, a spark of hope. The morning after the blind date, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The first thing that came to his mind wasn't his work or the list of errands waiting for him. It was her. Claire. He didn't expect to still be thinking about her, yet her voice, her smile, and even the quiet way she looked out the window during dinner kept replaying in his head. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just a nice evening and nothing more. But deep down, something about that night had stirred a part of him he thought was gone. Lily was still asleep when he prepared breakfast. As he cracked eggs into the pan, he caught himself smiling for no reason. When she woke up and joined him at the table, she noticed right away. "Daddy, why are you smiling like that?" she asked, squinting her sleepy eyes. Ethan chuckled. "Like what?" "Like you're hiding a secret." He tried to play it off. "No secret. Just a good morning." Lily tilted her head suspiciously. "You met someone, didn't you?" Ethan almost choked on his coffee. What makes you say that? You're acting weird, she said simply, biting her toast. You never smile like that on Mondays. He laughed. You're too smart for your own good. After dropping her off at school, Ethan drove to his studio. He sat in front of his computer, but his focus was elsewhere. He found himself wondering what Claire was doing. Was she already in a meeting? Did she even think about their conversation? He didn't want to seem desperate, so he decided not to text her first. If fate wanted them to meet again, it would happen naturally. Meanwhile, in a tall glass building across town, Claire sat in her office surrounded by reports and charts. Her assistant was going over the day's agenda, but Claire's mind kept drifting. She was used to being in control of her work, her schedule, her emotions. Yet since last night, she felt off balance in a strangely pleasant way. Ethan's calm, grounded nature had left an impression. He didn't try to impress her with fancy words or big promises. He just listened. That simplicity had been missing in her world for too long. Her assistant, Julia, noticed her quiet expression. You seem distracted, boss. Everything okay? Claire blinked and straightened in her chair. Yes, of course. Just thinking about a project, Julia grinned knowingly. A project or a person? Claire gave her a look but couldn't help smiling. You have too much imagination. Julia leaned on the table. Come on, you never smile like that on Mondays. Spill it, Claire sighed, giving in. Fine. I went on a blind date last night. Julia gasped dramatically. What, you actually went? I thought you said those were a waste of time. I did, Claire said, laughing. But my assistant wouldn't stop convincing me. Julia grinned. And how was it? Claire paused for a moment. Different. Refreshing, actually. Julia's eyes widened. So who is he? Banker, lawyer? Some big executive? Claire shook her head. A designer. He runs a small studio. Julia's excitement softened into surprise. Oh, that's unexpected. But kind of nice, Claire nodded slowly. He's kind, real, not trying to be someone he's not. It's been a long time since I met someone like that. The day moved on quickly, but both Claire and Ethan found their minds wandering back to the night before. By evening, Ethan received an email from a new client, asking for a meeting to discuss a potential project with a large company. It was good news, exactly what his business needed. When he read the company name, he froze for a second. It was Claire's company. He laughed out loud, shaking his head. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. Maybe fate really did have a strange sense of humor. The next morning, Ethan dressed in his best shirt, the same one he wore on their date, though he wouldn't admit that to anyone. He told himself it was just business, nothing more. Still, his heart raced a little faster as he walked into the tall glass building downtown. At the reception desk, he introduced himself and waited. When Claire appeared, she looked surprised but composed, as if she hadn't expected to see him either. Ethan? She said with a hint of a smile. He smiled back. Small world, huh? She laughed softly. Very small. They shook hands, both pretending it was strictly professional, but the warmth of that brief touch made it hard to stay formal. She led him into a conference room where a few of her team members were waiting. Ethan presented his ideas confidently, and Claire listened carefully, occasionally exchanging glances with him. It felt strange to be sitting across from her again in such a different setting. After the meeting, she walked him out. You did great, she said sincerely. The team liked your ideas. I'm glad, he replied. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I, she admitted. But it was a nice surprise. There was a small silence before Ethan said, Would it be strange if I asked you for coffee? Just coffee. No business talk. Claire hesitated, then smiled. It wouldn't be strange. I'd like that. They met later that week at a small coffee shop near her office. This time the conversation flowed more easily. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their failures. Claire opened up about how hard it had been to prove herself in a world that often doubted women in leadership. Ethan shared how raising Lily alone had changed him, made him more patient, more careful, more grateful. You must love her a lot, Claire said softly. She's my whole life, Ethan replied. Everything I do is for her. Claire looked down at her cup. That kind of love. It's rare. I respect that. Ethan studied her for a moment. And you? Do you ever think about having a family? She smiled faintly. Sometimes. But I've spent so long building this career that I forgot to make room for anything else. Maybe it's not too late, he said gently. She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. Maybe. As the days passed, their coffee meetings became regular. Sometimes they'd talk about work, other times about life. Claire found herself laughing more around him than she had in years. Ethan, too, felt lighter whenever he was near her. But deep down, they both knew their worlds were very different. He lived simply. She lived surrounded by deadlines and expectations. One evening, Claire stopped by his studio unannounced. She found him sketching while Lily colored beside him. The sight made her smile instantly. "Hard at work, I see," she said. Ethan looked up, surprised but happy. "Claire, what brings you here?" "I was in the area," she said casually, though the truth was she'd been thinking about him all day. "I thought I'd check how the designs are coming along." He showed her some drafts, and Lily proudly held up her own drawing. "Look, I made a flower," she said. Claire knelt beside her. "That's beautiful, Lily," Lily beamed. "You can have it if you want." Claire's heart melted. "Really? Thank you. I'll keep it safe." That evening, as Claire watched Ethan interact with his daughter, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. There was warmth in their small world that her big office could never give her. When she got home that night, she sat quietly on her couch, holding Lily's drawing in her hands. It was just a simple flower on paper, but it meant something. For the first time in years, she realized how much she missed genuine connection. But not everyone in her company shared her joy. Over the next week, whispers started spreading in the office about her growing closeness with Ethan. Some of the board members subtly questioned her judgment, warning that mixing business with personal matters could be risky. One afternoon, one of her senior partners approached her. "Claire, I've heard things," he said carefully, "about you and that designer. You know how people talk. It might affect the company's image." Claire kept her face calm, though she felt a flicker of anger. "We're working together, that's all," she said firmly. He gave a polite but skeptical smile. "Just be careful. Perception matters." After he left, Claire sat quietly, staring at the city outside her window. For a moment, she felt torn. She had built everything she had through hard work and sacrifice. One rumor could ruin her credibility. Yet in her heart, she knew Ethan wasn't a distraction. He was something real in a world full of appearances. That evening, she texted Ethan, "Can we talk?" He replied right away, "Of course. Everything okay?" They met at a small park near her office. The air was cool and the sun was beginning to set. Claire looked tired, her expression heavy. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked gently. She sighed. "People at work are talking. They think I'm getting too close to you. They say it could affect the company's reputation." Ethan's heart sank. "I see. I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean for things to get complicated." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to apologize, I get it. You've worked hard to build what you have. She paused, looking down. "I don't want to hurt you or your business." Ethan smiled sadly. "Claire, you don't have to explain." "We come from different worlds. I always knew that." Her eyes met his, full of unspoken emotion. "Different worlds, maybe," she said quietly. "But that doesn't mean they can't touch." He didn't know what to say. All he could do was look at her and hope that someday she'd choose what truly made her happy. That night they parted with uncertainty hanging between them. But as Ethan walked home, he couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't over. Something about Claire felt unfinished, like a song that hadn't reached its final note. Days turned into weeks after their last conversation in the park. Ethan tried to keep himself busy with work, but it wasn't easy. Every time he sat down to design something, he found his mind drifting to Claire. The way she smiled, the sound of her voice, the quiet strength she carried even when she was unsure. He missed her, but he also respected her decision. If she needed space to protect her career, he wouldn't stand in her way. Lily noticed the change almost immediately. "Daddy, you're quiet these days," she said one morning while they ate breakfast. Ethan smiled faintly. "Just tired, sweetheart." "You miss your friend," she said simply. He looked at her, surprised. "What makes you say that?" "Because when you talked about her, you used to smile. Now you don't." Ethan sighed, realizing how observant his little girl had become. "You're too smart, you know that?" Lily grinned. "That's what teachers say." He laughed softly, but her words stayed with him. Maybe he did miss Claire more than he wanted to admit. Across the city, Claire was also struggling in her own way. Her days were filled with meetings, emails, and endless decisions, but something felt different. The office walls that once made her feel powerful now felt like a cage. She caught herself looking out the window more often, wondering what Ethan and Lily were doing. She missed the simplicity of being around them, the laughter, the warmth, the quiet moments that reminded her of what life used to feel like before success became everything. One rainy afternoon, while reviewing reports, she found herself staring at a photo on her desk. It was the flower drawing Lily had given her weeks ago. The colors were fading slightly, but the memory it carried was still bright. That small, innocent gift reminded her of something real, something her world of deadlines and business deals couldn't offer. That evening, Claire made a decision. She grabbed her phone and typed a message to Ethan, but hesitated before pressing send. What if he had moved on? What if he thought she didn't care? She put the phone down, took a deep breath, and finally sent it. "Hi, it's been a while. Can we talk?" Ethan saw the message while closing up the studio. His heart skipped a beat. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Then he smiled slightly and wrote back. Of course. When and where? They agreed to meet at the same cafe where they had their first date. When Ethan arrived, Claire was already there, sitting by the window just like before. She looked different, softer, more relaxed, but there was still that familiar spark in her eyes. "Hey," he said, sitting down. "Hi," she replied quietly. "Thanks for coming, of course. How have you been?" "Busy," she said with a faint smile. "But I've been thinking a lot. About work?" "About everything," she said. "About us." Ethan stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "I realized something," she said slowly. "I've spent years protecting a version of myself that doesn't even make me happy anymore. I thought success meant never showing weakness, never letting people in. But when I was around you, it felt different. It felt real." Ethan listened quietly, his heart beating faster with every word. "I pushed you away because I was scared," she admitted. "Scared of losing control, scared of people talking, scared of everything I've worked for falling apart. But I think what's really falling apart is me." Ethan leaned forward. "Claire, you don't have to explain. I understand why you did what you did." She shook her head. "I need to explain. Because I was wrong. You and Lily showed me something I haven't seen in years. What it means to be human, to feel connected, to care without an agenda." Ethan's voice softened. "And you showed me that it's okay to dream again. I thought my world was complete with just me and Lily. Then you came along and reminded me what it's like to have someone to share it with." There was a pause, both of them lost in their thoughts. The rain tapped gently on the cafe window, creating a quiet rhythm between their words. Claire smiled faintly. "So what happens now?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Maybe we stop overthinking it. Maybe we just see where it goes." She nodded slowly. "I'd like that." From that day on, things changed again, but this time in small, steady ways. Claire started visiting Ethan's studio more often, sometimes under the excuse of checking on projects, though both knew it was more than that. Lily grew fond of her, always asking when Miss Claire would visit again. The three of them would spend evenings together, cooking simple meals, watching movies, or playing board games. For Claire, those moments were a quiet revelation. She realized how much she had missed the feeling of belonging. The laughter that filled Ethan's small apartment felt warmer than any corporate event or award she had ever received. One weekend, Ethan invited her and Lily to the park. The sun was bright, the air crisp with the smell of blooming flowers. Lily ran ahead chasing butterflies while Ethan and Claire walked slowly behind her. "She's got your energy," Claire said, watching the little girl. Ethan smiled proudly. "Yeah, she never slows down. Keeps me on my toes." Claire looked at him, her expression soft. "You're a good father, Ethan." "Thanks," he said quietly. "I just do my best." "You do more than that." "She's happy, and that says everything." He glanced at her. "You know, she likes you a lot." Claire smiled. "The feeling's mutual." For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Then Lily came running back, holding 2 dandelions. "Make a wish," she said, handing them each one. Claire looked at the tiny flower in her hand and smiled. "What should I wish for?" Lily giggled. "You can't tell or it won't come true." Ethan laughed. She's very serious about that rule. They all closed their eyes and blew the dandelions together, the tiny white seeds floating through the air like soft snowflakes. In that simple moment, Claire felt something shift inside her, a quiet hope she hadn't felt in years. But happiness rarely comes without its tests. A few days later, one of the company's investors called Claire for an urgent meeting. When she arrived, she was met with serious faces and cold voices. They had found out about her relationship with Ethan and questioned her professionalism. "Claire," one of them said sharply, "you're risking the company's reputation. People are talking. You need to decide what matters more, your personal life or your position." She sat quietly, her hands folded, her mind spinning. For a moment, old fear crept in, the fear of losing everything she had built. But then she remembered the park, the laughter, Lily's smile, and Ethan's calm voice telling her it was okay to just live. She took a deep breath. "I appreciate your concern," she said firmly, "but my personal life is not up for discussion. I'm still the same person who built this company, and if my team or clients judge me for being human, then maybe we need to rethink what kind of values we stand for." The room fell silent. Claire stood up, thanked them for their time, and walked out. Her heart was pounding, but for the first time, it wasn't from fear. It was from freedom. Later that evening, she showed up at Ethan's door, still in her office clothes, her eyes tired but determined. He opened the door, surprised. "Claire, is everything okay?" She nodded, though her voice trembled slightly. "I think so. I quit," Ethan blinked. "You what?" "I quit the partnership. I'll still run part of the company, but on my terms this time. I'm done letting people decide who I can care about." Ethan smiled softly, still processing what he'd just heard. "That's a big step." "It feels right," she said, exhaling deeply. "I'm tired of pretending." He stepped closer. "You didn't have to do that for me." "I didn't," she said, looking into his eyes. "I did it for me. But I'd be lying if I said you didn't help me see what really matters." There was a long pause before Ethan said, "You know, you're kind of amazing when you're not pretending." She laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I'm starting to believe that." That night they sat together on the couch, Lily sleeping soundly in her room, while rain fell softly outside. It wasn't a fairy tale moment, just two people sitting quietly, finally at peace with where life had led them. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder and he gently wrapped his arm around her. Neither said a word, but both knew deep down that something had changed forever. What started as a blind date between two people from different worlds had slowly become something real, something neither of them had planned for but both desperately needed. And for the first time in years, both Ethan and Claire felt like they were exactly where they were meant to be. After weeks of working side by side, things between Ethan and Claire had grown more personal than either of them expected. What started as a professional partnership slowly turned into something that felt more like friendship, and maybe even more than that. But just as everything was falling into place, life decided to test them both. It began one Monday morning. Claire walked into her office, calm on the outside but carrying a storm inside. Her board of directors had called for an emergency meeting. She knew what it was about. Whispers had already reached her, rumors about her and Ethan. Some employees had seen them leaving the office together. And people love stories, especially ones that blur the lines between business and romance. The meeting was as cold as she had feared. The board members praised her leadership but quickly turned to the topic that mattered most to them: image. They spoke in careful words, but their message was sharp. A CEO must stay clear of personal entanglements that could raise questions about company ethics. Claire listened silently, her heart beating faster with every word. When she walked out, her confidence felt shaken for the first time in years. That evening, she met Ethan at a small cafe to talk. He could sense something was wrong as soon as he saw her. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. They sat quietly for a moment before she told him everything. He listened, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup, not saying much. When she finished, she looked at him, hoping for words that could make it all easier. He simply nodded and said softly, "I understand." Claire's throat tightened. "I don't want this to hurt your work. You've worked too hard for your business to suffer because of me." Ethan leaned back, his expression calm but sad. "You don't have to explain, Claire, I get it. Your world runs on rules mine never had to follow." Her heart sank. She wanted to tell him that rules shouldn't decide how people feel, but she couldn't find the courage. The truth was she was scared of losing control, of losing everything she had built. So she made the only decision she thought she could. She asked for space. The days that followed felt empty for both of them. Ethan threw himself into work, but his heart wasn't in it. He missed the way she laughed at his simple jokes, the way her voice softened when she asked about his daughter. Even his little girl noticed the change. One evening, as they were having dinner, she looked up and asked, "Dad, why do you look sad these days?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just a little tired." She studied him for a second before saying something that hit him harder than he expected. "You should call her. You smiled more when she was around." That night, after putting her to bed, Ethan sat by the window with a cup of tea. The city lights flickered outside, and he thought about what his daughter had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe fear had stolen something from him that he wasn't ready to lose. Meanwhile, Claire's days became heavier. Her office was as busy as ever, meetings stacked one after another, but her mind kept drifting. She missed their quiet talks, the warmth in Ethan's eyes, and the easy way he made her feel human again. For years, she had lived surrounded by people who only saw her as a CEO. Ethan was different. He saw her as a person. One night, as she was working late, her assistant knocked on the door with hesitation. "There's something you should know," she said, placing a document on Claire's desk. It was a report from the finance department. Ethan's studio was being considered for removal from the company's vendor list due to conflict of interest. Claire froze. "Who requested this?" "It came from the board," the assistant said quietly. Claire felt her stomach twist. She knew what this meant. They wanted to cut all ties to avoid further rumors. It wasn't just business. It was punishment. Guilt washed over her like a wave. Her silence had made this possible. She sat alone after her assistant left, staring at the report. For years, she had fought to build her company on fairness and respect. Letting this happen would mean betraying those values, and betraying Ethan, who had done nothing wrong. By morning, she had made her choice. The next day, she walked into the boardroom with calm determination. The meeting had already started, but when she entered, all eyes turned to her. Without waiting for an invitation, she placed the report on the table. "I'm not approving this," she said firmly. The room fell silent. One of the senior members frowned. "Claire, this is a necessary step to protect the company's image." "No," she said. "This isn't about the company's image. This is about fear. And I won't let fear decide who we work with or who we value." Her voice didn't shake. It was the first time in a long while that she spoke purely from her heart. "Ethan's studio has delivered excellent work. Ending that partnership because of gossip is not professionalism, it's cowardice." The room buzzed with murmurs. The board didn't expect her defiance. Some members looked uncomfortable. Others exchanged glances, unsure what to say. But Claire didn't back down. "If protecting this company means destroying someone else's hard work, then maybe we need to rethink what kind of company we are." When the meeting ended, Claire walked out with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know what the consequences would be, but she didn't care anymore. She finally felt free. That evening, she drove to Ethan's studio without calling first. When she entered, he looked surprised. He had been working late, his sleeves rolled up, sketches spread out on the desk. She stood there for a moment, unsure how to begin. Then she took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," she said. "The board tried to remove your studio from the company list. They said it was to protect the company's name, but it was wrong. I stopped them." Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," she replied quietly, "because I was part of the problem. I let fear make me forget what mattered." He looked at her for a long moment, trying to read her face. "And what matters now?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Doing the right thing. And maybe fixing what I broke." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Ethan smiled, a small, real smile that reached his eyes. "You already started." They sat down, talking for hours. There was no tension this time, no guarded words. She told him about her fear of losing everything she worked for, and he listened without judgment. He told her about how his daughter noticed the change in him, and how he realized that happiness wasn't something you could plan. It just happened. Before she left, she turned to him and said, "I don't know where this will go, but I don't want to run away anymore." He nodded. "Then don't." As she drove home that night, she felt lighter. The weight she had been carrying for weeks had finally lifted. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she had made the right choice. Back in his apartment, Ethan checked on his daughter, who was fast asleep. He sat beside her bed and smiled to himself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And sometimes that was enough. In the days that followed, things slowly began to settle. Claire faced a few cold stares from some of her board members, but she didn't flinch. She knew not everyone would approve, but for once that didn't bother her. Ethan's studio received new projects, and their professional connection stayed strong. But now there was something deeper between them, something that didn't need labels. They met often, sometimes to talk about work, sometimes just to share a quiet moment. And though they didn't say it out loud, both knew that something real was growing between them. A bond built not on convenience or attraction, but on understanding, respect, and courage. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long while they both felt calm. Neither of them knew where this path would lead. But one thing was clear: they were ready to walk it together, step by step without fear. The following morning, Ethan woke up with a sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. The tension from the past few weeks had finally eased. He got ready for the day, packed Lily's lunch, and dropped her off at school. As he drove to his studio, he thought about Claire, the way she had stood up for him, the courage in her eyes, and how much she had changed not only her own world but his as well. At the studio, work felt lighter. Clients came and went, but his mind wasn't consumed with stress or worry. Claire's support had given him confidence not just in business but in life. He realized that her presence wasn't a complication. It was a gift, and he was determined not to take it for granted. Meanwhile, Claire was sitting in her office reviewing the latest designs from Ethan's studio. She smiled quietly to herself, thinking about the first time she had seen his sketches. He had a way of seeing beauty in simplicity, of turning small ideas into something meaningful, but it wasn't just his talent that impressed her. It was his heart. And the more time she spent with him and Lily, the more she understood what she had been missing in her own life. Later that week, Claire stopped by Ethan's studio unannounced. Lily was drawing at the small table, and Ethan was focused on his work. As Claire walked in, Lily's face lit up. "Miss Claire!" she exclaimed, holding up her drawing. Claire smiled and crouched down. "Wow, that's beautiful, Lily. Can I keep it?" "Of course," Lily said proudly. "It's for you." Ethan looked up from his desk and smiled at Claire. There was a comfort in these small moments, the way they had slowly become a part of each other's lives. Claire watched Ethan interact with his daughter and felt a warmth that no corporate success or achievement could ever give her. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. They shared quiet dinners, walks in the park, and simple moments at the studio. Life felt fuller, richer, and more real. The walls they had built around themselves over the years were coming down, and both were learning to trust again. One Saturday morning, Ethan invited Claire to spend the day with him and Lily at the local fair. The sun was bright, the air filled with laughter, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy surrounded them. Lily ran ahead, eager to try every ride, while Ethan and Claire followed at a slower pace, holding hands when the crowd became too thick. "Do you remember our first date?" Ethan asked, glancing at Claire. She laughed softly. "How could I forget?" "You were nervous and I was trying not to be intimidated by your calmness," he chuckled. "I was pretending to be calm. Inside I was a mess." Claire smiled, squeezing his hand. "We've both come a long way since then." They spent the day riding the Ferris wheel, winning small prizes, and sharing ice cream. Lily giggled as they went on a carousel together, her laughter filling the space between them. Claire couldn't remember the last time she had felt so lighthearted, so at ease. It was as if the world outside had stopped for just a few hours, and nothing else mattered but the three of them. That evening, back at Ethan's apartment, they sat together on the couch while Lily played quietly nearby. Claire leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. The silence between them was comfortable, full of unspoken understanding. "I never thought life could feel like this," Claire said softly. "Simple, honest. Happy?" Ethan nodded. "It's funny how we think we need everything to be perfect, but maybe happiness is just about finding the right people to share it with." Claire looked at him, her eyes shining. "I think I've found that, Ethan. Not just with you, but with us. With Lily." He smiled, feeling a warmth that reached deep into his chest. I feel the same. You've changed my world, Claire. More than you can imagine. Days turned into weeks and life settled into a comforting rhythm. Claire became a regular presence in Ethan and Lily's lives, and he became a steady support for her. Their connection was no longer fragile. It was strong, rooted in trust and shared experiences. Work, while still important, became something they navigated together, not something that kept them apart. One quiet evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan and Claire sat by the window with cups of tea. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the hum of traffic was a gentle background to their conversation. Do you ever think about the future? Ethan asked, his voice thoughtful. All the time, Claire replied, but I don't worry about it the way I used to. I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together. He nodded. I used to be afraid of so many things. Failure, being alone, making the wrong choices. But now I feel ready to build a life that includes all of us. Claire smiled, resting her hand on his. We'll take it one step at a time, but I like knowing we're on the same path. Months passed, and their lives intertwined in ways that felt natural. Claire joined Ethan and Lily on weekend outings, helped with school projects, and even learned to cook a few of Ethan's favorite meals. Ethan, in turn, supported her in her business endeavors, offering ideas and encouragement without judgment or expectation. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Ethan stopped and turned to Claire. I have something to ask you, he said, his voice steady but nervous. Claire looked at him, curiosity lighting her face. What is it? Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. I don't have a perfect plan or a fancy speech, but I know this. My life is better with you and Lily in it. Will you marry me? Tears filled Claire's eyes as she looked at him, the love and sincerity in his gaze overwhelming. She smiled through her tears. Yes, Ethan, yes. They hugged tightly, both feeling the weight of the moment and the joy it brought. Lily, running ahead, noticed the hug and came back with a bright smile. You two are getting married? She asked excitedly. Yes, sweetheart, Claire said, picking her up. We're all going to be a family. The days that followed were filled with planning and laughter. They kept the wedding simple, focusing on the people who mattered most and the love they shared. Friends and family gathered, witnessing a union that had grown naturally, rooted in understanding, trust, and respect. On their wedding day, Claire looked radiant in a simple dress, her hair softly curled, and Ethan couldn't stop smiling as he saw her walk down the aisle. Lily held their hands as they exchanged vows, a small voice adding a layer of innocence and joy to the ceremony. I promise to support you, to love you, and to share life with you, Ethan said, looking at Claire, through all the challenges and all the joys. And I promise the same, Claire replied, her voice steady. To cherish you, to laugh with you, and to build a life filled with love and honesty. They kissed, sealing their promises, while Lily clapped and laughed, overwhelmed with happiness. Friends and family cheered, and for that moment, nothing else mattered. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a celebration of how love, patience, and courage could change lives. After the ceremony, as the sun set and the sky glowed in shades of orange and pink, they walked hand in hand through the park where they had spent so many quiet afternoons. Ethan held Claire close and she rested her head on his shoulder. Lily skipped ahead, laughing freely, her joy contagious. We did it, Ethan said softly. Claire smiled. We did. And it's just the beginning. For the first time, both of them truly believed it. Their lives, once separate and uncertain, had become intertwined in the most meaningful ways. They had learned that love wasn't about perfection or timing. It was about connection, courage, and the willingness to embrace life's unpredictability. As night fell, the city lights twinkled around them, reflecting the warmth they felt inside. Together, they had created a world where love was simple, honest, and true. And in that world, they found not just happiness, but home.